Hey everybody, welcome to On the Homefront. John Murphy here with you. Very happy you're sharing some time with us. You might be catching us live here on WILI, AM 1400 and 95.3 on the FM. Every Wednesday, 5 to 6. We're right here in the house. It's also on YouTube. We record this for video. It's on our YouTube channel at WILI Radio. All of our afternoon shows, at least most of them, are on video, so you can catch them anytime. And we're also on WICH in Norwich, New London, and WECS in Willimantic. So we're very happy to reach you in different ways. It's all about our studio and our guests connecting to you each week. Another busy show this week. We recently celebrated Veterans Day, so we're going to have some people here who are involved with a Connecticut chapter of Veterans for Peace, something that's a good thing to talk about given what's happening around the world these days. So that'll be for the second half of the show. For the first half, music is the theme, and I'm always happy to have music in some way in our show. I'm here today with Chris Annino, the co-founder of the New England Music Hall of Fame. And Chris is here, and we're going to have Christine Ohlman join us on the phone. I've talked to Christine many times over the years, and she has a gig coming up. She has a few we'll be talking about. But we're here to talk about the Hall of Fame and music in New England. So, Chris, welcome to the studio for the first time. It's good to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's check and see if Christine is here. Christine.
I am here, John. I'm here. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How's the hive?
The hive is just fine today.
All right. Well, we're very happy to have you here on the phone, Christine.
Thank you.
So at some point, we'll talk about some things you have coming up in your own work, but right now we're going to talk with Chris about the Hall of Fame. And
sure.
I talked to him at that time, just a little bit of history. It's still a few years, old, and it's getting started, and we're going to talk about 2025. But Chris, I know you've done many things in your life that all relate to community service in different ways. But we're here today to talk about music.
Yep.
With your background, what led you to decide to commit to something like a regional Hall of Fame?
Well, actually, it was inspired by a very good gentleman that myself and Christine know, Tommy Bonanno. He actually had mentioned it once in a conversation. It would be nice to preserve a lot of the local greats, and then we added to that.
There's a very nice picture of him on your website.
Yes, very
That's
nice
right.
gentleman he was, and very generous as well. Our first induction, ironically, was down the street there at the Shabu stage.
Thank you, David Foster.
Yes, and Lefty was inducted. The Shabu itself was inducted.
Right.
Christine was inducted that day, as well as
right.
Cliff Goodwin.
Right.
And again, a very amazing individual there, Lefty Foster, and Lefty said, thank you for what you're doing. However, he gave me advice. He said, always give back to the community. That event there was for the Covenant Shelter.
Right, the Covenant Soup Kitchen, right.
Yes, sorry, Covenant Soup Kitchen.
Right.
And every year we do our individual inductions. I made a promise to him we'll always do it for a food shelter or a food locker. And that was out of respect for him. A great human being he is as well.
Oh, yeah, amen. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. So, about the industry now, so many changes happening. Some of them are really terrible for musicians. Some of them, technology-wise, they have a lot of new tools. They have a lot of new ways to get their music out. But the industry that you're honoring is going through a real hard time. And I wonder how you have learned over the years working on the Hall of Fame, trying to, honor success, helping people find their way, inspiring people through music. What have you noticed about the environment since you started the idea of honoring a big picture?
It's to answer that question is a little bit more of a simplistic answer. Music, it will always be around, and music will always be powerful because it will heal, and with healing it also unites. Right now we need music more than anything. Christine doing her concerts helps unite a lot of people and helps heal a lot of individuals. It gets them out of their work schedule, which is probably very stressful.
Yeah.
And I see this, and I've witnessed this numerous times at her concerts. And so, especially at the Cate's going to be a lovely event. And right there, we're going to be honoring a young child who was a good musician herself. She's getting Best Young Artist at 16 years old.
wonderful.
of age, she's getting this media award that we were discussing, which is separate than the inductions.
That's right.
We want to help the musician itself get empowered with these media awards. Maybe they're not ready for the Hall of Fame yet, but it helps them out, which is why we've designed this Best Young Artist Award.
Helps them on their way.
Yes.
Big time.
Juliana was the last inductee. Sorry, was the last award winner, and she made it to the Voice, actually, the TV show.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Wait, well, those are the doors that open. One door opens another one.
Yep.
Sometimes it's timing, but being ready at the right time. Christine, let's bring you in now, because I've had a chance to talk to you many times, and we've talked about the industry. But the thing I love about your work is you're keeping the history alive through sound, and the music you play and the songwriters you talk about are still out there thanks to live music. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about the Kate and also your connection to the Hall of Fame and what they're trying to do to keep the larger picture healthy.
Yeah. Well, I was one of the first people, I think, that talked to Chris about the New England Music Hall of Fame.
Right.
The first induction was in 2020, and right off the bat, we decided that it had to be something that had to be artists from every state in New England, not just Connecticut, obviously. And the Hall has really done a great job in that respect. Last year's induction included a lot of Massachusetts and Rhode Island people. And the upcoming year in 2025 will be the same. Live music, John, is really the bulwark of our industry right now, because certainly there's no money to be made from streaming unless you're streaming billions, literally, of streams a month.
That's right.
So live has become so important, and I think the Hall of Fame is really all about that. Their induction concerts have been really moving up, and just getting better and better every year. And so they also provide a chance for a really lucrative show for the musicians that are being inducted, because they always have it in a big theater, and there is money that goes to the participating artists, and that's really important.
Oh yes, major investments, sure.
Major, yeah. So we're really all indebted to Chris for this and the team at the Hall of Fame, and I'm very, very proud to be in the first class of artists that were inducted.
Well, let me give a website you all can jot down here, because it's easy to follow, and you can keep track of this work all year long. It's NEMHOF, NewEnglandMusicHallOfFame.com. The whole history is there for you, loaded with stuff. I want to talk to you about films that you're involved with as well on the side. But maybe this would be a good moment to let people know, if you're listening to us on the radio and not watching, we're talking about the New England Music Hall of Fame with Chris Annino and Christine Ohlman here. And maybe this would be a good time to give a little teaser. You made some recent announcements about the next batch in 2025, right? Oh,
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. We have a couple surprises that we will eventually announce. However, for right now, I will mention a few names.
Okay.
Yep. We have B.J. Snowden. She's going to be inducted in. Charlie Farron will be inducted in. Joe Pett. He's members from the Joe Perry Project. John Butcher is definitely going to be inducted in.
David Hull.
David Hull absolutely is going to be inducted in.
The great Tony Lynn Washington.
Yep, Tony Lynn. Sal Baglio. Mary Callahan. So we're adding people who are on Broadway. We didn't realize there's a lot of people from Broadway that live in New England. Mary Callahan.
Very nice.
Is in Mamma Mia, or was in Mamma Mia, the Broadway musical.
Well, that's music for you. You never know.
And we have Jim Capone. Roomful of Blues will be inducted in at a later date. And
they played Shaboo many times. Fantastic band.
John Chan will be inducted in as an individual too.
I just saw John this weekend.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's going to be very good. And Doug Wimbish.
Okay.
As well as the Energetics. The Energetics was the first ever all all-guy band, all-boy band before New Edition, before New Kids on the Block. And we had a DJ actually discovered this recently.
So what's their name, I'm sorry?
They were called the Energetics.
Cool.
And they were based in Boston.
Learn something every day. That's a cool story. Absolutely. Look that up.
Maya Days, who's on Law and Order, she's also a Broadway singer. She was in Aida, Jesus Christ Superstar, and she's actually from New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So, and she lives there too. And so we're going to be, and Michael Tunes. Michael and Tunes.
Beaver Brown.
Yep, yep. Beaver Brown Band. He's going to be inducted in. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. It's a great class, and it really speaks to every geographic, corner of New England.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and as it grows, it'll just get more and more unified. I just wondered, maybe without losing us in your internal process, how do you decide each year criteria for when someone is ready, and maybe you like their stuff, but maybe they're not ready yet? How do you walk that line?
We do have a selection committee, and that's built up of a lot of past inductees, DJs, and on-air personalities, which are the best historians, journalists, and they help, and they will nominate. The credentials are basically you got to be in the business for at least 20 years.
Okay.
We're not going to induct in an 18-year-old kid who has one album.
Yeah, no matter how good.
You're right.
They need more time. Yeah.
Really, yeah. So they have to pay their dues, absolutely. Basic things like that. I mean, some people aren't originally from New England. Like, there's some musicians that aren't from here. But if they've been here...
inducted James Cotton was inducted because of his great ties to the Shaboo.
Yes.
And we should just say that Steve Morris, who just passed away so suddenly of cancer, was supposed to be the MC at the next induction. And
That's
Steve
right.
was a internationally known journalist out of Boston. And he had been inducted last year, and then, am I correct in that, Chris? And then he was to be the MC this year. So we're certainly honoring his memory.
He absolutely, and truly a kind individual. He was going to MC this year, and the sad thing was before he got in the hospital, I had that conversation with him, and he said he was looking forward to it. And we lost a very amazing human being a couple weeks ago with him.
Yeah.
Well, there's lost history everywhere. And Christine, I want to congratulate you and James Montgomery for that performance you did this year with the James Cotton documentary that came out.
Oh, yeah.
Those were great shows at that theater when you played some music and then that James Cotton story. That was a great documentary.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, when you scan New England, what is your sense of the health of the venues these days? Not the bigger houses. They had more resources before COVID, and they got through it somehow. But the smaller venues that might be edgier, maybe more risk-taking, what's your sense regionally of how they're doing?
We'd like to... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you right now that there is in Connecticut, there is a major incursion of Live Nation, which is nothing but bad.
Yeah.
So they've now basically taken over Toad's Place in New Haven. The whole scene in Connecticut is shifting because of Live Nation. So, which we really don't need, honestly. Please go somewhere else, Live Nation, because we really don't need you. But you need us. You need to just, you just need to suck as much money out of the scene as you can. But to your point, John, a lot of the smaller venues did not make it out of COVID.
Yeah.
So, the scene has been changing, and I'm not thrilled to see, conglomerates coming in. And hopefully they've gotten a couple of clubs in Connecticut, and hopefully that'll be it.
Yeah.
For Live Nation. Yeah.
Well, at some point, if they're comfortable enough, maybe they'll be able to sustain the idea of, like the old larger networks used to say, you subsidize your experiments with your successes. You take a risk, the big ones make the money, and you try other things.
Yeah, I mean, I would buy into that if that would happen, you know. And but we have an enormous number of great venues in Connecticut, and really, I think we're lucky in that regard. And I know Chris is aware of many of the Massachusetts venues, for instance, the very long-running Regent Theater in Arlington, Massachusetts. It's been around for 40 years.
Yeah.
So, it's there's a lot of them that have managed through being nonprofit and having memberships and so forth, like the Katharine Hepburn, to really weather the storm.
Yeah. Well, I know in our area, like in the Northeast, we have places like the Packing House, and we have Strange Brew in Norwich. We have the Stomping Ground. In fact, our show is now getting more into Norwich and New London. We're going to get people here from the Guard, which is a larger theater, as well as Hygienic, which is a really interesting
Hygienic is great, and a great nonprofit.
Yep.
And, I should give a shout-out to the breweries. The breweries and the wineries are really picking up a lot of the slack that the small venues used to be with. So kudos to the breweries. We love you.
Hey, I just want to mention again, in case you've joined us on the radio, we're talking about the New England Music Hall of Fame today with Chris Annino next to me, one of the co-founders, along with Christine Ohlman on the phone. Chris, if you could use the crystal ball, or maybe that 8-ball cube thing, and say, what would be the best thing to help you grow and succeed? What would you need most? Everybody would say money, okay, great. But apart from money, what would help this effort grow the most?
How I designed it is, it's not money that fuels it. It's the people that fuel it and the passion that fuels it. I really don't need anything, and it doesn't really need anything as itself. Even if I was gone tomorrow, say I passed away tomorrow, it's still going to go because of what it means. I mean, to unite, to inspire, that's part of our mission statement. And right there itself, through music's always going to be around. We need music, so it's always going to be around. I really don't need anything to have it grow. It's just going to grow by itself. Now, finance always helps. It would be nice to have a bigger event where we can invite every single past inductee, including people like Christine Ohlman, the Sin Sisters, Cliff Goodwin, who you're going to see at the Katharine Hepburn event coming up. And other past inductees for a massive event. That'd be lovely. I'd love to have that.
Sweet.
But it's not in the cards as of now, but eventually I think it will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to give the website again, folks, because as this baby begins to walk, well, it's already walking, but as it grows, nemhof.com is the website. We have a few more minutes to go, and I want to add one more element, because the website has lots of information, lots of news information, but you've also gotten into filmmaking. And I thought maybe we could share a little bit that you've done some work. I saw there was a couple of films you made, and I wondered how that part of your work is going. It's not necessarily the music thing, but it's part of the big picture, multimedia.
Well, actually, I'm actually involving it with it. So, every year, I've interviewed everyone. Like Christine, I interviewed her the first year, and we put it on Nemhof News, which is now on the Kuza network, which anyone can watch. You can watch any past inductions. So the filmmaking I'm doing now is more documentaries.
Right.
So right now I'm trying to document, use that skill for this, where I can document every induction so it preserves the history. So therefore, there'll be a library of, hey, well, Paula Cole got inducted in 2022. Cool, let's check that induction out, who she's about, what she's about. Not many people know this. She was the first ever female to be nominated for a Grammy as a producer. June Millington, pioneer right there, especially with IMA and what they do. Wonderful to see that. So I'm trying to have it so the skill that I learned in filmmaking I can add to this. And so the documentaries I'm working on, aside from what I'm doing with the New England Music Hall of Fame, is I'm doing a women's wrestling documentary that I've been shooting for the past 15 years. And it's probably going to be finished either this year or next year. But it, again, chronologically shows what has happened in women's wrestling. I was just in a film with Rosario Dawson as an actor, and that was interesting. But again, the film thing is always going to be in my life. I'm not a musician, but I am a filmmaker, and again, I'm trying to use it so we can properly preserve
Sure.
the history, especially with something like the Shaboo, especially with guys like Lefty Foster. And again, people need to know about people like David Hull. He's a phenomenal musician. James Montgomery. I'm glad that they did do that documentary on James Cotton.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Beautiful. To answer your question, I'm always filming.
Well, it's a beautiful synergy because they go together, and there's so much history that was lost that never got photographed that we can catch these people while they're still around. Think about some of the masters and how little footage is there, and that's how they started to become the masters, all the way. Well, look, Christine, I want to make sure you have a chance. We're going to close soon, but maybe you talk about the Kate gig one more time and any other things you're doing for the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then how people can reach you on Facebook.
Sure. It's Christine Ohlman or Beehive Queen, Christine Ohlman. I have 2 pages.
Right.
On November 30th at the Katharine Hepburn with the Sin Sisters, we'll be doing Love is in the Air, a celebration of roots, rock, and romance. It's a special show we only do once a year at the Katharine Hepburn in Old Saybrook. And as Chris mentioned, we'll be giving an award to an emerging artist, young girl from New London, Connecticut. On the 1st of December, and this is, I think, sort of flying under the radar still, at the Capitol Theater in Willimantic, I'll be joining James Montgomery and Bruce John for a presentation of the James Cotton documentary. I saw Bruce put one thing up on social media, but that's happening on the 1st of December.
Oh, that's fantastic. Have you been in the Capitol Theater?
I have not, but I'm looking forward.
It is an art school. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And so that comes the night after the Cape. But please do join us at the Cape. And then on the 5th of December, I'm lighting the Wall Street Christmas tree on the steps of the New York Stock Exchange with Darlene Love in New York City. And the NYC Hit Squad will all be there, Ricky Byrd, Liberty DeVito. That's the 5th. And on the 15th of December, I'll be at Cafe 9 for my annual Christmas show. Chris Annino has attended. Maybe you can come this year, Chris.
I want to,
That's on a Sunday matinee at 4 o'clock. On the 15th of December. But the first thing that's coming up, guys, is the Katharine Hepburn on Saturday. And it's my birthday week, so come and give me a present. Just your present is to show up and be with me and the Sin Sisters and Rebel Montez.
That's fantastic. Will you keep the Beehive protected and in good shape?
Oh, yeah, I will, John. Thank you.
Yeah, the winds will be blowing. I know they'll be blowing.
Yeah, thank you.
Chris,
thank you so much.
Just before we go, any last thoughts you wanted to share? I thank you for coming by. We'll stay in touch next year. Is this is the big event February? Is that right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The big event is going to be in February.
Okay.
And it's going to be at the Vault in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Right.
And a majority of the inductees are going to be there. We are pre-inducting a few. And there's going to be a few surprise inductees that we will be adding to this.
Cool.
One person in particular, we are posthumously inducting Peter Tork.
Oh.
And Mickey Dolenz is going to accept on his behalf.
I got to do radio with Peter a few times. He married a close friend of mine, and then he and I used to go to Marvel movies with his son Max.
Oh, awesome.
So we saw the Marvel movies together. Peter was a really sweet guy.
Well, maybe you can attend that then, John.
I'll try to make that. I'll definitely be there. It'd be great to see him. To see Pam.
Richard Dart's going to be giving his award. Actually, it's his longtime drummer from the Monkees.
So I'm glad you mentioned it. Peter was sweet. So we'll keep you folks posted, and maybe we'll get you back, Chris, in early January after the holidays when things are nailed down more.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So one last time before we blow out with these folks is nemhof.com, and to get the videos of the awards and the other films that Chris was talking about, Ecusa TV, ECUSA TV, check it out, and we'll be keeping in touch, okay?
Oh, thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks so much. All right, so we'll take a short break, and we'll come right back and shift gears a little bit. It's still about peace, but now this is peace through music. Stay with us. Hey, I think we're back live on the Homefront. John Murphy here with you. We're very happy to have you with us. If you'd like to join us in the studio to share your story, just send us an email. By the way, Matt, my phones are still dead. Not violent. That's okay. I just love the sound of my voice so much. There we go. The email to join us is john@humanartsmedia.com. We're on the air live every Wednesday here at WILI, AM 1400 and 95.3 on the FM. We're also on Fridays on sister station WICH, covering Norwich and New London. And we're also on WECS in Willimantic at Eastern Connecticut State University, and we have a YouTube channel. So we're going to continue the show today and focus on Veterans Day. We just observed it a few days ago. And I've got folks with us that I've had on the air occasionally on the radio on my other station. They're from Veterans for Peace, Connecticut. They're from one of our chapters. We've had them on the air on my other show many times, talking about issues of war and peace and militarism and spending and human rights. And with Veterans Day just happening, and a lot of challenging things happening with the military and politics around the world, I'm going to give these guys time once in a while to add their thoughts to the mix of opinions. So sitting next to me are two members of the chapter here, Chapter 42. We have Greg Laxer with us and Bill Potvin next to Greg. And on the phone, we have the chapter chair, James Brasile, joining us. James, can you hear us okay? Are we coming through?
Yes, I can hear you. How am I on that side?
You sound just fine. So we're all together, and I thank you guys for coming down today, because things are pretty stressful in so many ways.
We ain't seen nothing yet.
I guess not. So they've had time to prepare. They have a statement. They have some thoughts that we're going to share. Are we going to have Jim start out with those 6 points?
Do you guys have any? Jim?
Do you guys have some introductory thoughts before we get into some more formal conversation? What do you think?
I'd like to at least point out
Please.
What energizes me right now. And it is the genocide. If you cannot focus on the critical moral issues with the genocide, you've got a moral compass that's disrupted or something. That's what, and my views on it pretty much reflect the Veterans for Peace group, which is fiercely anti-racist, fiercely anti-violence, as well as anti-empire. That says a lot about Veterans for Peace.
Okay, that's a good intro, I guess. Greg, do you have a quick opening thought, and then we're going to let Jim share?
I hadn't planned to say this, but it's important. It's a historical fact that 11/11 used to be Armistice Day, a celebration of the end of the First World War.
Right.
And the militarists who control things, including the mainstream media in this country, they moved Veterans Day from October to 11/11. So now we have the spectacle of militarist, jingoist celebrations before a football game on TV and everything, and it's pretty nauseating.
So you feel it's taken it out of its original context for
totally.
what it's all about.
It's now pro-war, not a celebration of the end of a war.
Right.
Well, I want to bring Jim in now. I'm sorry you can't be with us, Jim, but I'm very happy you're here on the phone. We've shared the radio many times. Maybe you could talk a bit about the work you do around the state, and then you have some thoughts you prepared that we'll go through a few of those. Maybe we'll do the first 3 and chat, and then we'll do the second 3. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, although we've been talking and we've adjusted our presentation a little bit, but I think it'll fall into place.
All righty, go right ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank Greg for bringing up Armistice Day. Because Veterans for Peace celebrates Armistice Day on the 11th of November, not Veterans Day, although we do appreciate what veterans have done. So let me just introduce to the audience, I'm Jim Brasile. I'm the chair of the Connecticut chapter. I live in Newington. These guys are up in Willimantic. The 3 of us are in the Connecticut chapter of Veterans for Peace. Veterans for Peace is an international organization, a few thousand veterans, over 100 chapters in the USA, and a few internationally. If you want to contact me, I'll give an email at the end. Some of us are members of the American Legion and VFW, but these organizations tend to support our country's a violent foreign policy of peace through strength. No matter how violent, no matter what the human cost, the financial cost to our families, to veterans and future generations. And this has to do with both sides of a conflict, American and the people in the other countries. Veteran suicide comes to mind when I talk about this.
Yeah, it's very high.
Yeah, we actively fight against this type of foreign policy. And I just want to make a note before I stop here for a second. In our country, there's a 1% of the population that profits from violence, war, and chaos. that supports our military-industrial complex, holds political power, either Democratic or Republican, and whose policies are promoted by a mainstream media, to some extent, Hollywood and sports entertainment also. And like Greg had mentioned, I saw a 2-hour NFL pregame for Veterans Day at the U.S. Naval Base at San Diego. It was kind of upsetting to us and from what we're coming from. We do not support, John, these war profiteers.
Well, that goes back to the end of the Second World War. The famous speech from President Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander of all the forces, who also warned us as he left the office, kind of like George Washington in a different kind of warning. He was saying, beware of what you've created, because the industry was converted for the war, and then it was like, is it going to get converted back or not? What's the issue? And all these decades later, that warning is still very pressing.
Let me tell you what Veterans for Peace does support. And I know Greg wants to say a few words.
Yeah.
We do not look at foreign countries with fear and distrust. We promote peace through democracy, not war. And we don't want to hide behind a $1 trillion military budget. We want to communicate with countries. Members have experienced the foreigner. We've been in service when we were younger. We thought about these situations. We studied and learned from history. And we've come to realize that a large majority of the people of the world, 99%, no matter what flag they live under, they want what we want: peace, justice, and a chance to raise their families. And I'll stop there, and at the end I'll tell you what we've been doing lately.
Okay. All right. All right, Bill, you have some thoughts?
Well, I think I should start it off with the definition of genocide. It's the planned systemic annihilation of a ethnic, religious, or national group by another group. And it's one of the ugliest things that any people can do to another people.
Right.
And we supposedly learned from the Holocaust, which was before the time I was born. I was born in 1946. And it was an ugly thing done by the Germans against the Jewish people.
That's right.
And there was supposedly a lot of things that were learned. The Geneva Convention, the Nuremberg trials, rules of war were created so that this could never happen again. Well, it's happening again, and it's kind of ironical who's doing it.
Yeah, and that's a good point to raise. Why I have these folks here today is to provide a space for conversation. Some issues don't come up in the national news as much as others, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. But we have these guys here today to say that in the dialogues in the future is going to be the way out. It's a time of history. Europe is on the edge of a serious military conflict. It already is in a mess, but the rest of NATO is wondering what's going on. Russia is very worried as well on both ends. So we have all these international things on the edge of repeating. So we have to talk our way out of the mess because we know what's happened before. And when you think about genocide, the whole conversation is, how do you rationalize the other argument that says Hamas hides in hospitals, they're evil people, how hard of them to hide behind bodies, and that's their way. And nobody wins that argument because it's emotional, right? Mm-hmm. How do you tone that down? Well, people think it through and say, well, we got to stop it. And how do you keep both people from going back to the old ways?
That's beyond me.
It's very naive, I know, but that's where news ends.
Yes.
That's where the news ends.
I think you got to start with the truth, that's all. And we don't do a good job of the truth.
Right. Jim, I want to ask a question because you shared a statement that our Representative John Larson put a statement in the record in Congress recently that you wrote. And do you want to mention how he supported that? Even though he didn't always agree with everything, he thought your point of view was very important to share, and he put it in the official record for you?
Yeah, he put it in the congressional record.
Right.
And it has to do, I didn't write it, but Veterans for Peace National. We have a veteransforpeace.org website. If anyone wants to go there and look at our position statements, every month we have one at least, And the one that John Larson put into the record was the fact that we are bringing to attention the 6 laws that President Biden is breaking every time he sells weapons to Israel. Mm-hmm. We also put out an indictment on Anthony Blinken, who has lied to Congress about Israel letting human aid into Israel. So that's what he doesn't agree upon politically. He agrees upon as a human being, but there's something the United States can't do to help these poor people out in Palestine.
So when you have that moral breakdown where the 30-day deadline passes and Israel was given a month to try to change its ways, and it's not getting through as much, the UN has no power at all at this point. They're kind of useless as far as I can see, with all due respect. They're not doing much, but that might be behind the scenes that we don't even know about, so I have to be careful. My ignorance could really embarrass myself. But it seems like to the public, they're not doing much except talking. Their Security Council structure is frozen. So you have one member attacking nations, and nobody's doing anything with the member that goes rogue. There's nothing written down, so what do? So how do you guys navigate? Because one of the things that these folks do is they go around the state to certain events, they visit schools. What's the barometer like? What feedback do you get when you try to bring these thoughts up at different kinds of meetings and let people think of the other side?
Well, I know one thing that we were highly appreciated when we went to a couple of universities up to Storrs, Yukon, and to Central in New Britain. And the kids who got in serious trouble for doing the right thing, I told several of them, you have more moral integrity than your bosses, the people running the universities. You know, nowadays it used to be presidents of universities. Now I call them CEOs of universities. Their function is to get as much money out of previous graduates, etc. And they're losing the mission statement of education oftentimes. So the kids who got hung out there actually very warmly received us and felt so reinforced by having some old guys say that you guys are doing the right thing. Mm-hmm.
Jim, when you do your work, are there any state legislators or officials or federal officials that are open or supportive of you reaching people and getting more dialogue out there so we have more kind of public conversations and not just one side talking to itself, but more real dialogue?
No, it's hard to even approach local politicians. We've been kind of pushing our way into the colleges right now, and we're pushing our way into the local city ourselves. That's the only way it's going to happen. They are kind of listening to our mainstream media and don't recognize the small voice of peace that Veterans for Peace is offering. I just want to give my email address in case anyone's interested in joining or helping out. VFP Connecticut, the number 42 at gmail.com, and I'll fill them in with anything they like to know. Because we need to be active in peace, not war.
Yeah. We got a few more minutes for this first visit today. We'll have these folks back once in a while during the year because the situations we're talking about are ongoing, that's for sure. It'll be part of the mix. Greg?
My turn?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I came prepared to deal in hard statistics today. And the first one is this country is wasting over $1 trillion a year on war, and they have a dandy one going in the Middle East and the dandy one going in the Ukraine, on war and preparations for future wars. So now China, Iran, and of course the perennial villain, Russia, they're all on the rifle sites, or I should say the nuclear bomb sites for the future aggression. So, and you have to take into account the CIA's budget, some of which is off the books. The public is not entitled to even know.
It's the black box budget.
Yeah, what their budget is, and the cost of caring for veterans. Oh, veterans. We are talking about veterans today. Their health care, their injuries from the recent wars, some of which are really ghastly.
Well, they're surviving more, and in the past they would never have survived anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So you lump all that together, it's over $1 trillion. So how much is $1 trillion? If you were somehow able to spend $1 million every day of the year, starting at the time that Christianity appeared on the planet, you'd still have to spend another 7 centuries plus beyond the present year just to spend $1 trillion. And this is how much this country is taking taxpayer dollars and throwing it down the rat hole of war, perpetual war, current wars, preparation for future wars. Meanwhile, I hear these public service announcements on the radio from a nonprofit called Feeding America telling me that 13 million American kids are or undernourished.
Yes.
Today, here in the richest country in the history of the world, the wealthiest country on the planet. How can this be? Well, we got to look at our national priorities, huh?
Yeah, good point.
That's a good point, and I think that's a good point to close our first conversation, because we're planting seeds for more in the future with more definition. But veteransforpeace.org is the website. Jim, do you want to give the email one last time?
Yeah, to contact me, VFP Connecticut 42@gmail.com.
Okay. And, all these guys were veterans serving in Vietnam. One big difference is during the Vietnam, there was this thing called the draft, where young people in college got called to duty. And some of them stayed, some of them left. But it's a different pressure now. And young people hear about the war, they don't have to deal with the draft. So it's a more distant story. And the problem is the news has to bring it a little closer so people take a look a little deeper before it becomes a local thing. Who knows? But we're trying to keep it positive, and that whole thing means dialogue and letting people exchange. So I'm glad you guys are here today. Thank you, Jim, for joining us on the phone.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll have other people in the back. We look at health care, we look at tenant unions, and we'll look at war and peace as well. It's a huge part of our state budget. It's something to take a look at once in a while. So I'm getting the yelling now. It's time to go. Thank you very much for being with us here on the Homefront. We'll see you next week. Take care and keep the faith.